Welcome to Money Savage, a savage approach to personal finance. This is George Grumbacher, and the time is right. Welcome to today's guest, a strong and powerful Dane Reis. Dane, are you ready to do this?
Absolutely, man. Let's get after it.
Let's let's do this. Dane is an entertainment career expert, and he is the host of the You Booked It podcast. I'm excited to have you on. Dane, tell us a little bit about your personal life, some more about your work, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been in the entertainment industry for over 16 years. Can't believe that it's actually been that long. But I've worked in all different aspects of the industry, mainly live performance. So think like Broadway musicals and things like that. I've worked in New York. I've worked in Las Vegas. The last 7.5 years or so, I've spent out of Vegas and then using that as a hub to go this way and that, wherever the world may take you. It's a great place to make a hub. Performed in Europe. I've sung with Philharmonics in Australia, all over the place, and in a lot of different parts of the industry, not just musical theater, but also stage management and production and mascotting. I've done quite a bit of that as well, randomly, won some awards there, and seen a lot of different aspects of this industry, and all that kind of culminated into me doing what I'm doing now, which is the podcast and hosting that and creating that medium for people to have as a resource so they can go into the world knowing how the heck to actually turn their talents and their skill sets into a sustainable career in this industry that most people seem to think that there is no sustainability in.
That's probably the right term, right? Is sustainability.
Exactly right, and that's hugely that's a huge part of it because a lot of people in the entertainment industry as entertainers. I mean, if you're not an entertainer, you look at it and be like, that seems like the most insane career path to do. There's no sustainability. There's no reliability, and in some regards, you're you're right, right? But also, it's more about I think changing the mindset of entertainers because it's actually much more closely related to being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, something that much of the world celebrates and glorifies and says, "Oh yeah, you're doing your own business. That's amazing." Well, being an entertainer really is the same thing. You're just the product and service being sold, and how you frame that and how you put yourself out there into the world and market that to the world is massively important. And part of that is what creates the sustainability.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was excited about our call because I've never really. I'm a fan of Joe Rogan's. He does a
Yeah,
million different things, but he's a
yeah.
professional stand-up comedian, and I fancy myself sort of a funny person. And I thought in the back of my mind that perhaps one day I could do stand-up comedy. And so I've sort of thought about, okay, that's interesting. How do you actually make a living at that? Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, and then I look at a lot of industries like the practice of law, which has essentially been
Hmm.
trading time for money for a long time, and now even
Yes.
industries like mine, financial advisors are now going more hourly. So it's not. Is it sort of if you can figure out how to in fact get paid for your time, that's what we're talking about, or it's performances, it's everything.
It's kind of everything because it's this whole all-encompassing thing. So I guess it really, if you kind of starts with my journey through the industry, right? So I started this industry quite late. I didn't start dancing, singing, any of that stuff till I was 17 and a half years old or so, almost 18 years old. So in the performance world, the entertainment world, like super late. We've got a little 4-year-old daughter and she's been in dance classes half her life already. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's more the traditional way people come into this industry. But I was a jock. I was kind of your high school musical glee story and got injured out of sports and then all of a sudden had to transition to something. And I guess it was singing and dancing naturally, I guess. And not so naturally, but it's all right. But I went to this great training program. I went to the Boston Conservatory at the time. It was ranked the number one school in the entire country for musical theater. And then spent an outrageous, ungodly amount of money going to that school, got this insane skill set, right? Go into the world and go, holy crap, I don't actually know how to make this skill set make me money,
Right.
and it blew my mind. Like, how do I spend a couple $100,000 on an education where I don't even now know how to use this thing practically?
Hmm.
And that took years for me to kind of really figure it out. And yes, of course I figured it out, but it took time, it took years out of like prime performance time in my life, because you really are competing against the clock in a lot of ways, depending on, oh, if you're going to be doing dancing and things like that in this industry, it is what it is.
Sure.
And I thought it was ridiculous that that anyone would do that, have to go through that. But the more I chatted with people, my castmates and my peers, the more I realized we were all in the same boat, which is crazy. And it's still the same thing. Like, everyone teaches everyone how to do the thing, the singing, the acting, the dancing, whatever your skill is, learning how to actually do that. That's kind of the baseline. And then once you get to a certain level of this industry, being talented is a given. Everybody in the room's talented. Everybody can do whatever the skill is that you need to be doing to be booking jobs, right? It's all the other stuff around the actual skill set that no one teaches, no one talks about, and that's the stuff that actually makes a career. It's the mental health, it's the motivation, the mindset training, it's the marketing that you need to do for yourself now because of social media. You have to be in charge. You're your own PR team, right? How do you do that? It's also financial literacy. How do you work in this industry where maybe you're working a combination of W-2 and 1099 jobs? Like, how do you get an S corp? Is that something you need, or just an LLC? Is that fine? Do you even need one? What kind of volumes
Right.
of work are you doing? Knowing these kinds of things, no one talks about. So all of those little tidbits, I started having conversations with friends, and we kind of figured it out. And it was just kind of very one-on-one thing. And then that, of course, led to being like, oh, I need to actually communicate to some people, because this is valuable information. So let's try to get myself into different training programs, schools, and things like that. Let's go in there. Hey, I want to talk to your students. Say, hey, this stuff is really important. What you're teaching them is amazing, but I'm telling you, this stuff is actually what's going to give them a foundational skill set to make what you're teaching them work for them in the real world. And then that transitioned into the podcast, because I've been very fortunate through my career to be very busy and have a booked calendar, but then COVID hits and decimates the entire entertainment industry, right? And I go, well, here's a great opportunity for me to have these conversations on a much bigger scale, because the way the industry works in, say, LA is different from New York, is different to being in Singapore, Hong Kong, to London, to Australia. Yes, it's all the same industry, but there's different quirks and different ways that you need to navigate this industry. And then also different parts, whether if you're in the spotlight on stage, or maybe you are on the back end, stage management, production, casting, agents, things like this. There's so many different ways you can go in this industry. By having all these different conversations, now we're able to get more of this all-encompassing view of how this industry works. How do people navigate it? How do people transition through their careers? Because that's a big thing in our industry, because you can only dance for so long, for instance, right? You just can't. Not going to be on the spotlight dancing on
Sure.
stage when you're 60 years old. You're not going to, and you just don't even look the part anymore. A 60-year-old's not going to get the part that a 20-year-old gets. They're just not, right? So how do you transition through your career? And it's been really, really enlightening to have these conversations and to really create this amazing resource for people to go to, so they can pull from and go, that's how I do it.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would just be really overwhelming.
And it is.
that's that's the
That's
word
the whole point.
that's the word that's in my head. I'm a guy that likes to try to put the pieces together. I'm like, oh my goodness, that is overwhelming. And particularly if I'm a more artistic person and maybe my brain doesn't work that way, how do I marshal all those resources so it makes sense that you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing about the entertainment industry. Look, if you're going to be, say, a dentist, now I'm sure if I spoke to dentists, I would find a lot of nuance in the directions
Sure.
and the paths that their careers could go. But from from my viewpoint, it's a fairly linear path, right? From education to getting your training to getting a practice or doing whatever it is you do, versus being an entertainer. So many people that I know, they start off, they're like, they've been dancing since they were children. They love dancing. They're passionate about it. That's what they want. So they go to do that. And then they get into the professional world. They realize, you know what, as much as I love dancing, you know what I'm really passionate about? Editorial hair and makeup. And like, that's their thing, right? But yeah, it's in the same industry, but they are two very different things, right? And having that discussion of like, okay, well, how did you get there? How did you arrive there? What little fundamentals or niche tips do you have about getting there? And specifically, say if you're doing it in LA, like what can you tell us about LA for people that are thinking, oh, that would be really that's how I should navigate being an editorial hair and makeup person in LA specifically. So there's so many different places and areas you can go in this industry that you have to really have these conversations to figure out what those things are.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Um, what was sort of going through my head is my wife grew up as a little girl being a dancer, and she danced for years and years and years and years and years, and probably wanted to be a ballerina. And I was thinking, okay, well, there's only so many real ballet companies, right? It's like if I
Yeah,
want to be a ballerina, I can go to XYZ. Maybe every city has a ballet, but there's only
yeah,
so many slots. So how do I actually figure out how to get myself in front of those people if that's the career that I want to follow, and just be organized and
exactly right.
marketing and everything?
Yeah, and then when you get into the world, say dance companies, for instance, being a concert dancer is very different than being on Broadway or going on tour with musicals or working on cruise ships or working in Vegas. That's the thing. There's so many different markets in this world, and different markets suit different people,
Hmm.
depending on what your goals are in your lives. But so many people come into this industry. I know I did. I'm like, you know what? It's Broadway or bust. That's all. The only thing, as far as being a professional
Yeah.
entertainer is on stage, that's it. Broadway. That's it. But and a lot of people, and same with the concert dance. People go, "Oh, I want to dance for ABT. I want to be an Alvin Ailey," and like that's it, right? And then they get into the world, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, there's a whole freaking world out here that is literally global that you can work in
Yeah.
and be fulfilled." And a lot of people just don't know that those markets and those outlets exist.
Yeah, fascinating, right? You just start to there's plenty of people who are interested in having a production of a wonderful dance at their event or company or whatever, right? I mean, it just
Yeah.
literally, I mean, there's probably
Oh, I've done
more of a need than.
well over yeah, we do. We call those industrials in the industry. So like when you go to conventions or conferences and things like
Yeah,
this, and there's some kind of entertainment. There's always some
sure.
kind of entertainment, right? And yeah, so we call those performances on industrials. You do a lot of work for literally one performance. And the crazy thing is, it usually takes just as much work to put a show up one time for one performance as it does to do it for 100 times,
I bet.
right? Because once it's done, like you still have to create it, right? To do it again, that's the easy part. to so it's really full on. But yeah, I've done, gosh, well over 1,000 of those in my career, from really small, very intimate things to like huge productions. So yeah, that's a huge market of this industry that a lot of people don't even realize exists.
Yeah. Oh, super interesting and challenging. If you put your mind to something and you acquire skills that make you essentially a professional. And I'm thinking about if you do the work and you become you go to law school or medical school, which
Mm,
is if you become a concert pianist or a professional ballet dancer, it's horribly sad and crazy to think that you're just not going to use those skills. But when you're advising people, I'm just sort of rambling here, and I apologize. This idea of you want to fail fast in a company and be able to pivot. How do you help people to figure that out, since they do have these skills, but maybe they're not cut out for this life?
right. I mean, that's a big thing for sure. A lot of people think that they want to be entertainers or they want to be in the entertainment industry, and they go, "Oh, actually, what does reality that look like?" And it's really not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a lot of careers are, you know. It's the way it
Yeah.
is when you really get to the day to day. A lot of people, I think you can compare it to like the corporate idea. Everyone sees the big shiny skyscrapers. I want to work in that amazing building. You're like, well, have you actually been inside that building
Right.
and looked at the floors where people are working? Because it's not that nice. Most of the companies is just rows and rows and rows of little cubicles of people in their desks, right? So not that inspiring, but for some people that's their jam and that's what they
Yeah.
want, right? And that's totally cool too. But yeah, learning if something is actually right for you is good. In this industry, if you're a stage performer, I think one of the best markets that you can go and do is cruise ships. It is like the down and dirty, like super fast. I did a handful of cruise ship contracts. It is the fastest way to figure out if you want to actually do this for a living, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I love the cruise ship industry for so many reasons in this world. But if you're looking for one thing and your goal is to be like, all right, do I want to do this professionally? It's a great place to go. Now, they're not, of course, for everybody, and it's not, if you don't like your ship contract, doesn't mean the lifestyle's not for you. But on a ship, what you get to do is you get to perform in a lot of different styles throughout a contract that's maybe 6, 7 months long, so it's not that much time,
Hmm.
right? You're gonna make great money. You get to travel while you're doing it. Worst case scenario. So, and what you get to do is you get loads of time on stage and reps and practicing, and you really get the grind and the feel
Yeah.
of what the day to day is to be a professional entertainer. And you can figure that out in 6 months. If you're like, you know what, I thought I wanted to do this. This isn't really for me. This lifestyle is not going to be for me, and that's totally cool. I think the thing that I coach in the most with people is to first ask themselves one question, and that is to say, ask yourself, what is it that you want out of your entertainment career? Because it's a question I never asked myself until much later into my career,
Yeah.
and it's something that almost nobody really takes the time to ask themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so important because, and it's also a question that's, it seems simple at first, but the more you think about it, it's really quite involved and multifaceted. And you really have to stick with that question for a while and really come up with as clear of an answer as possible for yourself. Because when you do that, how you answer that will direct you in this industry. I mean, for instance, do you want to work wherever in the world? Are you willing to just pick up your life at a moment's notice and move wherever it needs to be?
Right.
For a contract? Is that something you're okay with? Yes, no. Okay, figure that out. Do you want to be on a ship? Yes, no. Okay, figure that out. Do you want to live in a major metropolitan city like New York and be there and most likely do other work that is not entertainment related so you can support yourself financially while you pursue your actual passion? If you're not okay to do that and you just want to perform and entertain for a living, maybe New York's not the best place for you. Do you want to be on film and TV? Well, Las Vegas probably isn't going to be the place you want to go. You probably should go to LA or something like this.
Yeah.
So figuring out what it is you want out of your career can help figure out which market to place yourself in. And all that does is it gives you a huge advantage going into a market because now you're clear about what you want. You're not wasting your time. You can go after things very specifically, but also when you show up and you go into those rooms and you're giving yourself, you're auditioning, you're putting yourself in front of people, well, you're going to have more energy. You're going to have more excitement, more passion for whatever it is that you're doing. And that really does translate to the casting directors, to the producers, the people that can actually hand you a contract. They see that because it's all that unspoken stuff, that energy stuff, not just the actual task that you're doing, not just the skill that gets you booked. So how you feel and how you and your passion and what you can bring to the table has so much to do with how you get a job. And by being clear, and if you're in the right place and you're in the right mindset and the mind frame, that's going to make you more attractive to them. That's only going to help you become more successful.
I love it. Makes sense. Well, Dane, Savage Nation is ready for your difference-making tip. What do you have for them?
Oh, I almost feel like I just gave it. is to be very clear about what it is that you want. But how about this? I'll say three things that you should do. My one tip is three tips.
Yes.
To to making this career work for you if you're in the entertainment industry. And I think actually it applies to just about everything. So first, be good at what you do. And that isn't some egotistical thing being like, I'm really good at singing or dancing, or I'm really good at whatever it is that you do. It's about being good with people, with relationships. It's about having integrity. It's about showing up on time. And that's being good at what you do. Second, be nice to every single person you meet, because you never know. I mean, especially in the entertainment industry, but even everywhere, you never know who someone is. You don't know what someone will become. You don't know who you will become. So you can maybe you met someone who'll be a great resource or great referral down the line. So be nice to everyone. And then third is to say yes until saying yes becomes a problem. And then when it does, then you can kind of scale it back and go, I kind of spread myself too thin. But unless you get to that point of spreading yourself too thin at least once or twice, you don't know. You have to figure out what that limit is for you, and then you can get some point of reference on that.
Well, that is great stuff. That definitely gets it. Come on. Dane, thank you so much for coming on. Where can Savage Nation learn more about you?
Yeah, George, thank you so much for having me. So if you want to check me out, go to the podcast, check that out. You can look for it on any podcast platform. Just search for You Booked It. It's a blue logo. If you like the interwebs, go to youbookeditpodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram. That is the most active social media presence I have, and that is at You Booked It Podcast. Send me a DM. Let's chat. I'm always available. And if you're super interested in coaching with me, talking with me, and taking it to a much more personal one-on-one level, you can head over to youbookeditpodcast.com/coaching.
Love it. Well, Savage Nation, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, show Dane your appreciation and share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to the youbookeditpodcast.com, find the You Booked It podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, and check it out. Schedule some time to visit with them. Thanks again, Dane.
Thank you.
And until next time, keep fighting the good fight, because we are all in this together.